Hi everyone. My name's David Berthold. I'm the director of the Center of Creative Practices at NIDA. I'm sitting here today where I am, at least on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. And it's wonderful to be on their land. And I do want to pay my respects to all their elders, and a particular welcome to any First Nations people listening in today. I'm thrilled to be able to talk with Shannon Murphy. Hi, Shannon.
Hi.
Great to see you. You're quite the person of the moment now with Killing Eve, I've got to say. I guess we have to start there. Here in Australia, we've just seen the 5th episode of season 3, which you directed. I think next Sunday we see episode 6 of the 2 that you directed. I guess I really do want to ask you about that straight up, because I guess 2 kind of questions. One, what's it like as a director coming into such a well-established and such a popular series? But also that particular episode 5, a really unusual one in the context of the story too. So what was it like entering it?
Well, I flew straight from Venice, where Babyteeth had premiered, to London, and I literally was on the ground for about 24 hours before they put me on a plane to Romania for Killing Eve, because that's where we shot Ep5. So that was quite surreal, because I was on this plane with all these new creatives that I'd never met before. And I sat next to the designer, and he and I just started talking about the visual world for Ep5. And then we landed in Romania, somewhere I'd never been. So I was just taking it all in. And we went to this very remote village called Comandau, which is on top of a mountain about 4 hours out of Bucharest. And it's a really isolated village, and nothing has ever been shot there before. And they took me to the top of this hill where they had found what they were hoping I would like as the house for Villanelle's family. And it was perfect. And then we looked at other areas for the Harvest Festival. But I remember looking at that house going, my gosh, it's like quite derelict and falling apart. But then I was shown all the drawings of how they were going to build on top of it. And there are pyrotechnics and things involved in what we have to do with that house. I won't give everything away. But yeah, it was just completely straight, hit the ground running. And I was trying to get my head around the fact that I did have this very unique episode, and how far I was going to be able to push it to being something quite different to what people had seen in the show before. And luckily the producers are very bold and experimental, and they were like, just make it your own. You know, you can make it as Twin Peaksy as you want, or whatever else, you know, your ideas are, but they never didn't want me to keep putting my own stamp on it and making it completely sit on its own. I mean, they call it a bottle ep when something like this completely deviates from the normal storyline. But a bottle ep is usually something that is more cost effective, so it's all kept in one room, like one space. I have to say, even though the ep plays out like that, it definitely wasn't like a cost effective ep, because we had to go to another country.
Yeah, it's a pretty extraordinary episode, you know, and it's kind of Villanelle's kind of backstory, I guess, or origin story with her family back in Russia, and filmed in Romania, as you say. And Eve doesn't even appear, so it is a really kind of out of the box episode.
Yeah.
For it. So I guess that did enable you to put your stamp on it by that fact. But yeah. More generally, you know, they're looking for you to share your own voice within the series.
Yeah, they really were. And for example, we did quite different things with the titles in this episode. And we actually even do more of that in 6, but also the music was quite different. And David Holmes, who's the composer, he's very famous and a wonderful musician. And he really embraced that different sound world that we were playing with, which was at times more nostalgic, but then also we really wanted to go with the sort of Euro pop kind of music that would be playing around there. And we were really focused on not allowing the Russian rural village to feel stereotypical anyway, and to really represent what a contemporary rural world looks like, and to not mock it and to make it feel really authentic. So actually the Harvest Festival is completely based off this amazing video that we found of all these different activities that were happening at this real Russian festival. And yeah, there's nothing in that that's not in these real harvest festivals. The dung throwing is even what they do. Yeah. So we just really went to town with that. We had this huge field and we got so many extras and local villagers to be in it and set up their own local stalls and just really create an atmosphere that would be fun for Villanelle to play in, because she's such a child in these environments at times. She sort of loves the simple delights that children are into. And so we knew that she'd kind of run with that. So half the time we were just trying to capture as much as we could with all the cameras we had, because there was just so much going on.
Yeah. And I guess because of what the episode is, a very personal episode for Villanelle. So it must have made quite a close relationship with Jodie Comer.
Yeah, she had just come back from the Emmys and won, and she knew this episode was coming up and she really wanted to channel something quite special for Villanelle that people had never seen before, and that could really give everyone a clearer psychological understanding of why she is the way she is, but without answering everything or tying it up too perfectly. And so we talked a lot about costume and how that was going to be quite different this time, because it was important for it to not, like, Villanelle normally wears costumes to make her feel good and to have control over situations, whereas this time she was wanting to blend in a bit more and feel part of a community that she wasn't sure she was ever welcome in. Yeah, and then other fun things we played with was the apron that she wears towards the end. We thought, what kind of fun apron would her mum maybe have, but that would look amazing on Villanelle. And I was secretly like, what outfit would everybody then dress up in for Halloween next year?
Right. And a bit of Elton John dress ups in there as well.
That was Jodie. Like, I mean, we designed all that for Elton's room. And then we were just about to rehearse a scene and Jodie was like, oh my gosh, I just saw that bedroom. It's amazing. And she was like, there's no way Villanelle would walk in that room and not dress up. And I was like, we'll do it. And then she put it all on.
So that wasn't scripted, was it?
That was not scripted. No. And as soon as she put it on, I was like, oh, it's perfect.
Fantastic. It sounds like a fun shoot.
It was really fun. Yeah. And all the family members, I insisted that they all had to be Russian speakers, because I wanted them to be able to speak the Russian really naturally and have their accents perfect. And but they were from everywhere. They were from Tel Aviv. They were from Berlin, Prague, Ukraine. Yeah. So we brought them in from all over.
Amazing. So how did Killing Eve come to you? It's such an extraordinarily successful season. How did you?
I had just joined a UK agency. Rita Carnier, who wrote Babyteeth, put me in touch with her agent, and she said, look, I've got some interesting TV series that I think you'd be really good for. And she listed them, and one of them was Killing Eve, and like my jaw just dropped, because I was going, look, honestly, you don't have to push that hard. I was thinking I'll sign with you anyway, but I was going, Killing Eve, yeah, right. And then she literally called the next day and was like, okay, so you're meeting for Killing Eve's next week. And I was going, oh my God. So I just kind of tried to stay calm before that interview. In fact, the truth is I panicked and I tried to cancel and pull out of the meeting like 2 hours before. Because I hadn't I hadn't seen season 2, because I was in post-production for Babyteeth and my head was just completely in that. But they'd seen a final version of Babyteeth, but so I almost tried to get out of it, which is insane. And then she was like, you absolutely can't cancel this. You have to go ahead with this. She's like, you can either lie and pretend that you've watched season 2. Here's the download of what happens in season 2. And I was like, I can't do that. I'm just going to blurt out that I haven't watched it. So I had this interview, and then the second interview I had seen it and I could talk more about season 2. And then, yeah, look, I cracked a joke. I remember that actually at the time, I remember thinking that was probably really inappropriate, because, English people don't find crass Australian humor as funny as we do. And I had said, like, tonally, what I loved about the show is you could make people laugh about things that they would never be able to laugh about. Like, I said, if you take something like paedophilian can make a joke about it. Like, that's full on, because most people can never find that funny. And I made this comment and everyone's Zoom froze. And I remember going, oh, look, I've just lost that job. But then I did get the job. So obviously they either didn't hear what I said or they did find it funny.
So they'd seen Babyteeth, and because we haven't seen Babyteeth yet, it hasn't been released here, but a play from Rita Carnier, as you say, which I think premiered at Belvoir, I think in about 2012, something like that. So very much a theatre, writer becoming a great, an actor, Rita becoming a great writer as she is now. Yeah. Did you see the play before Babyteeth came to you?
I actually hadn't, and I think it must have been because I must have been out of the country or something, because I see almost everything that's on at Belvoir, and I began my theatre career there myself. But I didn't read the play actually until quite far down the process of pre-production for Babyteeth, because I didn't want to be too influenced by it. But when I did, what I loved about it were the titles that Rita had in it, and also she had this through line of what the dead said to Miller, which I thought was really beautiful. And so I wanted to work those back into the screenplay. And so we did that. And I love her words coming across the screen as the titles. I think it really works for the timeline and for the idea that these are final snapshots and memories of someone's life.
Yeah. It's a pretty remarkable story too, Babyteeth.
Yeah.
Young girl dying of cancer and developing a relationship with a junkie.
Yeah. And I think, it's tricky because when you hear what it's about, I think a lot of people go, oh, okay, like The Fault in Our Stars or something like that. And it's just not. And that's because Rita's such an extraordinary writer and is such an amazing observer of human behavior. And she's really captured something that is such a heavy scenario for a family, but added so much humor into it. And by doing that, it's made it incredibly authentic. And I think that that's what people are responding to. It feels so real. And they have really fallen in love with each of those four characters, including Essie Davis and Ben Mendelsohn, who play Anna and Henry, are an amazing component to that family story. And it's a hard one to describe, but I often say, and this is Rita's quote, but it's a story about how good it is not to be dead yet.
Yeah.
It's kind of the tone.
Yeah. You talked about tone there a bit, and I actually do want to talk to you a bit more about that, because certainly Killing Eve and Babyteeth, well, certainly the play, I know, I haven't seen the film yet, but both of those have really unusual tones. And, humor when you don't expect it, kind of high style in a way, but stuff that's also familiar, really surprising. And I remember your theatre work in Sydney, after you graduated from the directing course at NIDA, the tone of your work was similarly really unusual, like the sense of humour that you had in a lot of your work. I think I heard you say once you liked kind of straddling the sublime and the sadistic. And that kind of makes sense. Then it kind of makes sense of Killing Eve and of Babyteeth even. So, did the producers see some of that, of say Babyteeth, for example, how that project came to you? Was the tone of your work part of what was attracting them, maybe?
Definitely. It's come up a lot. And even in all the interviews I've kind of had over the last few months, I think that is what people recognize in my work, that I really enjoy and kind of celebrate unusual tones. And also what you were saying was interesting about performance style, because I think from my theatre background, what I really enjoy as well is having quite theatrical performances that can still feel incredibly grounded and realistic. And so it's that combination of I think I pick projects that I read, and what normally I am concerned about is like with Babyteeth, I remember reading it going, oh my gosh, how do I make that tone palpable as you're watching it? It's easier when you're reading it, but how do you actually translate that into vision? So I think that's what I'm always drawn to. And I love that. In theatre, what I loved was I always got the sort of new Australian work or the slightly more experimental plays at times. Or I did love a lot of the projects coming out of the Royal Court because they were quite bonkers. But yeah, I love that. I think for me, that's interesting because I want the challenge. And I think tone is where for me it lies.
Yeah, even when you're in a meeting for Killing Eve and making jokes about, it's the same kind of thing, isn't it? I mean, it's your humor, your tone. Yeah,
totally. And I think it is like, I think that's what, in a way, you are hiring a director for their taste and their personality, because that's what they will infuse into the work no matter what. And I think a good director will also listen to the personality of the writer. Like, I feel like Babyteeth is very much my personality and Rita's together. And I think when you can make that marriage work, it's really, it pays off, because you don't want all your work to be the same either. I always hope that it feels like I've served the project rather than trying to impose myself onto it.
Yeah. Yeah, both those projects, to my mind, really suit your taste and
yeah.
Tone, and but also in colour and music too, which are really important to you. Like music in particular, you know, you spoke a bit about music in Killing Eve there.
Yeah.
The music's always been very important to you, hasn't it?
It very. In fact, you know, it's funny because I remember, David, when you judged, you critiqued our end of year plays at NIDA.
Right.
Yeah, you came in and you watched them, and you were the special guest that gave us feedback. And I remember like being terrified. But I just remember how you remembered everyone's name, everyone's project, and every single detail. And I went, oh my God, this guy's incredibly smart. And I had music. I had a live cellist play during my NIDA graduating piece. And I think at the time I didn't realize how important music was to me, but I grew up in Asia and I was in musicals all the time as a kid. Like, that was what I did for extracurricular. And so I've always loved music and what it can do in storytelling. And with Killing Eve and Babyteeth, and even the TV series I did for SBS called On the Ropes, I worked with the same editor called Steve Evans, and he's extraordinarily musical. And like, he and Andy Commerce, who is the cinematographer of Babyteeth, and we all went to WOMAD last year together to kind of find new music. And we talk about it all the time. We all make a playlist whenever we're working on a project together. He does one, I do one, Jess Moore, our music supervisor, does one, our composer, Amanda Brown, and we share them with everyone, all the creatives. We listen to it all through pre-production, and we just keep constantly thinking about the sound world. And with Killing Eve, Crocodile Rock was in there. That was actually in the script, but it was really important for me to always play the music on the day. And with Babyteeth, there's 2 pieces of music that we play on the day on set, which the sound department hate because they want to do it all in post. But for me, it's essential because you can't get the same feeling from the actors. And it does something to the crew and the camera team. Like, they move really differently when the music's playing. So, yeah, I love music. And I also love using it in a different way in cinema and TV, not in a manipulative way. So I often hard cut things out, or will juxtapose what the scene is actually about, because I think if the scene's doing one thing and the music's doing the same thing, what's the point?
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
And then color, I love lots of color. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very clear. And certainly in the Killing Eve episode, I've seen, you know, like really beautiful coloring, actually, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
You talked about growing up in Asia, and I wonder if that, you know, is maybe a bit of an influence in your sense of humor or of your tone that is so much part of your work, you know, growing up in Hong Kong and Singapore, and a bit of Africa as well, but mostly Hong Kong. So you're very, you know, lots of influences there, I guess, you know, and very different senses of humor, you know, Africa and Hong Kong, very different places.
Yeah, but I think you're right. Like, I think I grew up with such a sort of mix of people from different cultures, and they've all got a different sense of humor. I mean, Hong Kong is really funny because, yeah, I guess, you know, like, I think a Chinese sense of humor is pretty hilarious too. I mean, it's just, it is having all those influences. I think it definitely affects my color choices. Like I do think because I grew up in this incredibly neon, vibrant city, that I don't like to shy away from color. And, you know, of course, being influenced growing up in Hong Kong by the films of Wong Kar-wai and I guess, yeah, I mean, the sound worlds too, like Babyteeth does this and Killing Eve a bit, but I like very noisy sound worlds. With Babyteeth, we made a conscious effort not to clean up all the sound, to keep it really kind of messy and noisy, because we felt like that would sort of ground it in almost a more documentary style audio world. But yeah, it's so hard to know what influenced, you specifically.
Yeah, but that makes sense to me. Like the kind of those disparate senses of humor and all those kind of Asia and African places you've lived, and the colours certainly of Hong Kong. I can see the neon and busyness of Hong Kong infusing a lot of your work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you still have much connection with Hong Kong?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, my brother lives there, and my nephews are there, and I go back. I try to go back once a year, but I go back at least every 3 years because I'm still a permanent resident there, and I want to keep that up. Yeah, I love it. My dream would be to make a film or TV show there for sure. Like I love it.
That'd be amazing. Yeah,
it would.
You're very much a theatre person. I think you trained at the University of Florida, I think, first, were you, in acting, performance?
I trained in acting because they didn't have a directing course. So I did my honours in directing while I was there. But there just weren't as many schools offering directing when I was at uni. And I didn't want to go to one of the fancy ones because they're so expensive in America. My mum's American, that's why I went to uni in America.
Yeah. And then the directing course at NIDA, and then, you know, pretty quickly a pretty firm career in theatre in Sydney, mostly. But I don't think you had a particular interest, though, in film and television at that time at all. You know, theatre was very much your thing. You know, you'd done a lot of study and a lot of thinking about theatre and a lot of practice. So where did the film and television thing happen?
Oh, yeah, I was such a diehard theatre fan. Like, I never had any dreams of moving into film and TV. In fact, I kind of was rejecting it. Like, my agent was asking me to try and make a short film, and Dan, my partner, was always saying, you know, you should do film and TV. And actors I worked with said the same. But I don't know, I loved theatre so much. And I still felt like I had so much to learn in that world. But gradually, I did feel like I was getting offered the same size projects over and over again. And I was always like the 3-4-hander New Australian project, and I wanted bigger budgets and I wanted to expand into bigger spaces. So I did an opera, which was experiential and in the Art Gallery of New South Wales, and that made me also go, oh, I just really want to keep going bigger. So I went to film school because I thought, I don't think I'm going to necessarily get the opportunities I want here, but also I was at the Berlinale watching Matt Moore's short film Julian, which is about Julian Assange being a dibber-dobber as a kid. It's a great film. And he won the Berlin Bear. And I was there doing a show at the Schaubühne, and I remember thinking when I watched his short, and all the other ones around his, I thought, actually, I do want to try and make a short film. Because they were so experimental, and it kind of made me realize that the form has many elements to it, and it can be quite varied. And so I went, okay, I've got to go to film school. And I did that, and I was honestly like the least experienced person in my class, because they were all super tech nerds and brilliant at editing and doing all this stuff. And I couldn't even turn a camera on day one. Right. But I said to them, like, don't humiliate me. If you help me do this tech stuff, then I'll help you cast your films. So we did.
That's a good deal. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, make me look good and I'll make you look good.
You the actors, so you were great.
Yeah. And I love that year to just, because, you know, I think it's quite nice as well going back to school when you're a bit older and have had a bit more experience. There's something really wonderful about having a year where you just get to immerse yourself watching films, talking about films, trying to make films. So I got a lot out of that. And then I got attached to a producer called Imogen Banks, and I watched how TV was made for the first 6 months, and then I had a baby, and then she asked me not long after that to do Offspring. So yeah.
I think you skipped over a pretty critical moment there when you were saying you were looking at those short films in Berlin, which was really the kind of epiphany moment in a way. Like, oh, actually, film is kind of interesting after having consciously rejected it. You were saying you were directing a show at the Schaubühne, and you were in the Festival of International New Drama there at the Schaubühne. So,
yeah.
One of the great theatre companies of the world. So how did that happen?
I was really fortunate to get a scholarship through NIDA, which allowed me to go and be an attachment to Thomas Ostermeyer for several months and watch how that theatre company does work. And I actually went for the Find Festival the year before to see all the different amazing directors and productions they do from all around the world. And I also got to go to Amsterdam and watch Thomas open his version of Ibsen's Ghosts, which was beautiful. And just got to meet some really interesting people and see how they operate. And then they invited me back the year after to do this performance art work that I was doing quite a bit in Sydney and Melbourne with two actors from WAPA, Sarah Enright and Simon Caulfield, and we would create shows with no dialogue that were audience interactive and had a live DJ, and they were pretty out there shows.
Yeah, you used to feed the audience meat, didn't you? And blood everywhere.
Yeah, there was usually blood everywhere. Almost always Simon was transformed into a woman and Sarah was transformed into a man. And it was just wonderful. It was really, and I guess that was a purely visual mode of storytelling with just music. So I guess when I sort of think back, there was definitely a progression in how I was telling stories, which would lead to cinema for sure.
Yeah, well, certainly when you describe that show there, like the tone and the colour of those wordless theatre experiments you were doing in Sydney and at the Schaubühne in Berlin. You can see, you were talking earlier about colour and tone, you can see the connection.
Yeah, and I think, that's what's so great is I think what I always like to do is keep challenging. Like I have shape-shifted quite a bit, even in the theatre world, of what kind of work I was making, but I hope that I can continue to do that in film and television, because I like always doing something different. I don't want to make something I've already made. If I can avoid it.
So up ahead, we've got episode 6 of season 3 of Killing Eve on Sunday. But what about you? What's up for you coming up? What project are you looking forward to, do you think?
I'm attached to a project with Amazon and a company in London called Sisters Pictures, and they made Chernobyl. And this is a project called The Power, and it's by, the novel is by a woman called Naomi Alderman, and it's about, it's a hard one to explain. It's about what happens when women become more powerful than men through violence. So they can be more violent than men because they have the ability to electric shock men, like eels can electric shock each other, which sounds super sci-fi, but it's actually quite organic in the way that it's done. And so they can do it either when they're sexually aroused or feeling angry, so it gets misplaced quite a lot. And it's about this movement that happens all around the world. So it's a huge project because it's shot all around the world, and Reed Morano, who created The Handmaid's Tale, set it up as the director, she's set up this project, and then it's on hold at the moment until the world opens back up.
Nice. Well, we hope it opens up again for us and for you so that we can see that. That sounds like an amazing project.
Yeah, it could be great.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Shannon. Awesome to talk with you. And we'll see you again soon, I hope.
Thanks. Thanks, David.
Bye.